I'm Natasha Kirchek, and thanks for joining us from our studios in Israel. Coming up in today's newscast, some Arab states are offering Israel improved ties, all in exchange for peace concessions. We'll reveal the crazy budget behind President Trump's trip to Israel. And this may sound crazy, but Israeli researchers may have just discovered a real fountain of youth. Stay tuned for the latest news in Israel. A significant breakthrough toward regional peace might possibly be underway now that some Gulf Arab states are considering forming ties with Israel. According to today's Wall Street Journal, several Arab Gulf nations are willing to improve relations with the Jewish state if Jerusalem makes a major effort to revive the peace process with the Palestinians. This normalization process reportedly includes permission for Israeli planes to enter the Gulf countries' airspace, as well as the creation of the interlinking of trade and telecommunication lines. So what's the catch? Well, there are a few, and they're pretty big. Israel would first have to agree to freeze all settlement construction and also ease trade restrictions with the Hamas-controlled Gaza Strip. By the way, Saudi Arabia tops the itinerary of U.S. President Donald Trump's impending visit to the region, where he's planning to meet with other Arab leaders from neighboring states. He'll then come to Israel, followed by a stop at the Vatican. The United States' new ambassador to Israel, David Friedman, has arrived, and he's ready to take up his post. But you'll never guess who his first meeting was with. The new envoy said he wanted to pray for his longtime friend, U.S. President Donald Trump, when he arrived in Israel. So he asked to be taken straight from the airport to the Western Wall in Jerusalem's Old City. And it was there that he happened to bump into an even more famous figure, Aerosmith lead singer Steven Tyler. That's right, at the holiest site in Judaism. We're all really wondering exactly what they had to say to one another before going their separate ways. Tyler has been visiting the country with his girlfriend ahead of a sold-out show in Tel Aviv tomorrow for his band's first Israeli concert in 22 years. Ambassador Friedman's also officially taking to the stage of world diplomacy. By that is presenting his credentials to Israeli President Reuven Rivlin today.
As you know, the president has chosen the state of Israel as a site for his first international visit this coming week. His love for and commitment to the state of Israel is rock solid, and it enjoys his highest priority. Mr. President, I look forward to working with you and all the people of Israel to do even more to bring together the United States and the state of Israel.
Mr. Ambassador, I wish you a very successful and productive term in office. I look forward to working with you to make the responsibility and the relationship between Israel and America and between the Israeli and the American people stronger and stronger.
All right, it looks like the Trump administration is more divided than ever when it comes to moving the U.S. Embassy from Tel Aviv to Jerusalem. Veteran bureaucrats in the State Department, Department of Defense, and intelligence community are issuing stern warnings to the president against the move, according to CNN. At the same time, Trump advisors in the West Wing are imploring him to keep his campaign promise. Many are wondering if the president plans to announce the embassy move when he arrives in Israel next week, or if he'll be the fourth president in a row to backslide on the pledge. Trump plans to make the first presidential visit to the Western Wall during his trip, but Israel's Channel 2 News is reporting that officials from the American consulate and embassy in Israel have been claiming that the Jewish holy site is not part of Israel. Senior Trump officials have clarified that this is not the president's stance and that these comments are unauthorized. For years, the Jerusalem consulate has acted as a de facto embassy of Palestine, and diplomats posted there have even clashed with the IDF at security checkpoints. Joining us today in the studio to discuss U.S. President Trump's upcoming visit to Israel and the future location of the American embassy is Dr. Heim Weissman, an expert on Israeli-American relations. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you for having me.
So let's begin. What can we expect from Donald Trump's visit to Israel?
A lot of ceremonies, a very warm welcome, very little essence. That's what I think.
Now, why is that?
I think he is not crystallized yet. He doesn't know exactly what he wants to do. His people push him and pull him to all directions. And he's coming from Saudi Arabia, where he meets Arab leaders. He can't just, after that, move the embassy to Jerusalem. They will tell him he cannot do it. It will cause here a chaos, a lot of terrorism, a lot of attacks against Americans, against Israelis, and I don't see him doing it right now.
Now, it's not only Arab states that are advocating against the move. We are hearing reports that the Prime Minister of Israel himself, Netanyahu, actually secretly told President Trump that it was not a good idea to move the embassy. Now, Netanyahu is denying those allegations. He's released audio recordings of his conversation with Donald Trump. What do you think about that move? What is your response to his choice to share private conversations with the president publicly?
Henry Kissinger once said that Israel doesn't have foreign policy, only internal policy, internal politics, more than internal policy. And Mr. Netanyahu is intimidated by Mr. Bennett. And Mr. Bennett accused him indirectly of giving up moving the embassy to Jerusalem. So he had to prove that he is no less a patriot than Mr. Bennett. Now, it's true that he released the protocol of his conversation with President Trump, which is a precedent. However, the fact that he said or he revealed what he said, he didn't reveal what President Trump said. So it is within the boundaries of diplomacy.
I mean, we're talking about very internal political issues within the Israeli government that are now being affected by this embassy move, which is really the United States' decision. Why is that? What do you think this impact is going, the impact of moving the embassy would have on the Israeli government coalition itself?
It creates, it enlarged the flames. There is a fight between Mr. Bennett and Prime Minister Netanyahu. Prime Minister Netanyahu is afraid that Mr. Bennett is stealing his base, his right-wing base. And if you look at Israeli politics in the last 2 years, it's all the time Mr. Netanyahu is looking what Mr. Bennett is saying, what Mr. Bennett is doing, what Mr. Bennett is about to do or about to say, and he tries to preempt his moves. For example, let's take the case of Elor Azaria. Okay, Mr. Netanyahu, Prime Minister Netanyahu first denied the act. He condemned the act. But when Mr. Bennett applauded to Elor Azaria, Prime Minister Netanyahu shifted his position in 180 degrees and called the father and came out with the declarations that supported the Elor Azaria. So this is what he is doing in the last what he has been doing in the last at least 2 years.
Well, I mean, there is no doubt that the U.S. president, his choices and his choice in regard to the embassy is going to impact what is happening here in Israel on the ground within the government. But, I think the bigger question here is, why is Donald Trump so set on being involved in the Israeli-Palestinian conflict? Shouldn't he be focusing on making America great again, as he said in his campaign? And can we really expect him to be successful?
He will be successful somehow. I believe he will be successful in bringing them together. I mean, President Abbas and Prime Minister Netanyahu. Essence, I doubt. Now, for Mr. Trump, making America great again is also making America again the policeman of the world. Being here, he saw what happened when America didn't do anything. Okay, after President Obama declared about the red line, that if Assad is crossing that line, which was chemical attack against his civilians, and nothing happened after declaring the red line. And what happened? The Russian came in. And so, President Trump struck already once, showing and insinuating, I'm not going anywhere, I'm here. You will have to take me into consideration when you deal with this area.
Well, I guess we're going to just have to wait and see what happens next week when President Trump finally hits the tarmac here in Israel. Thank you so much for joining us, Doctor.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
U.S. President Donald Trump will be making his landmark visit to Israel in just under a week, but preparations are already underway. Now, believe me when I tell you, you will not believe just how much baggage a presidential trip entails or what it's costing to ensure his safety. First of all, just like all visiting presidents, the White House is shipping a special limousine to transport Trump. It's affectionately known as the Beast, and it's not only armored and bulletproof, but it's also protected against grenade, bomb, and even biological and chemical attacks. Altogether, a whopping 30 C-17 American aircraft are needed to transport everything that Trump needs, including another 56 vehicles for his entourage. And that's not all. They're also shipping in this incredible protective glass that's going to be installed at the King David Hotel where Trump's staying in Jerusalem. And speaking of accommodations, 3 entire hotels are being reserved for the 1,000 plus members of the press, White House logistics, and the security personnel who are tagging along. It's all adding up to about $100 million of taxpayer money, but hey, who counts pennies when it comes to making sure a president is safe and comfortable? That number really is unbelievable. All right, Syrian President Bashar al-Assad has crossed a red line and it's time to assassinate him. Those are the words of an Israeli cabinet minister, and as stunning as they are, they've been prompted by even more shocking reports about atrocities being committed near Damascus. The U.S. State Department is accusing the Assad regime of carrying out mass executions of thousands of prisoners and then disposing their bodies in a huge crematorium. Washington says there's evidence that about 50 detainees are being hanged each day at the Saidnaya military prison, which is just 45 minutes north of the Syrian capital, and their corpses are being burned immediately after. Retired Israeli military general and current housing minister Yoav Gallant acknowledges that targeted political assassinations are considered illegal under international law and that he's not necessarily speaking about practicalities. But he's drawing a parallel to Nazi Germany, saying this is something the world hasn't witnessed in 70 years. He insists anyone who's conducting directed chemical attacks, mass murder, and the burning of their opponents' corpses no longer has a place in this world. Gallant made the comments while addressing a ground warfare and logistics conference near Jerusalem. He also voiced his belief that the world will wipe out the Islamic State, Muslim Brotherhood, and Al-Qaeda terror groups because they lack the same level of support as Syria and Hezbollah, which are backed by Iran. The former head of the Israeli Army's Southern Command compares the elimination of Syria's strongmen to cutting the tail off of a snake, adding that after that we can focus on the head, which is in Iran. The Israeli Navy has shot and killed a Palestinian fisherman who entered unauthorized waters after he ignored their calls to turn back. The fisherman Mohammed Bakar was immediately evacuated to a hospital in southern Israel for surgery, but he later succumbed to his wounds. A military spokesman says that before opening fire, an Israeli naval vessel also sent out warning shots, but Bakar refused to return to the area where Palestinians are permitted to fish. A sea blockade is maintained on the Gaza Strip to keep weapons from being shipped in by the ruling Hamas terror group. It's also to prevent other terrorists from trying to infiltrate Israel or launch attacks from the Mediterranean. The permitted zones are adjusted seasonally. From now until June, boats can sail up to 9 nautical miles offshore, where they can access bigger catches in deeper waters. The Palestinian Fishing Union is furious over Bakar's death and charges that its boats are often fired upon.
جريمة جديدة تضاف إلى سلسلة جرائم الاحتلال التي يمارسها بشكل يومي بحق الصيادين من خلال عمليات الملاحقة والمطاردة وملاحقة الصيادين بلقمة عيشهم.
Fishing is one of the biggest industries in the coastal enclave, which has a population of about 1.9 million inhabitants. For the first time in history, a female Sharia judge has been appointed to the courts in Israel, and the nation is celebrating. President Reuven Rivlin and Justice Minister Ayelet Shaked swore Hansa Mansour Khatib into office on Monday. And while many are celebrating, some traditionalists are concerned that this constitutes government interference in the religious courts. Israel has had Sharia court systems for its substantial Muslim minority since 1948, but it's been a male-dominated judiciary. Now that Khatib has taken office, she's pledging to work within Sharia rules, but says this victory shows how the courts can support equality for women. Her appointment is not without controversy, though. Hardline Islamists in Israel are saying that a woman in the position of Qadi is not religiously acceptable and that the move is politically motivated. However, Ayelet Shaked has pointed out that countries like Indonesia, Egypt, and Malaysia already have female Qadis. Shaked, the number 2 in the religious nationalist Jewish Home Party, says that this act is shattering a glass ceiling. Under Jewish law, or halakha, women cannot serve as judges, and some ultra-Orthodox Jews are expressing concern that Khatib's appointment will be used as a precedent to challenge this. The Israeli legal system is influenced by the millet courts of the Ottoman Empire, so religious communities have a lot more independence than in the West. Don't be surprised if you happen to see people in Israel openly using marijuana in oil or vaping form because it's just become legal. Well, as long as you have a prescription. No one is allowed to smoke cannabis in public, though, whether they're authorized or not. But this now relaxing of patients' medical usage of the drug has just been approved by Israel's health ministry, effective immediately. The previous prohibitions were too complicated because patients were only allowed to administer medical marijuana at one registered address when no one else was supposed to be there. That entailed way too much bureaucracy when they moved, had to be away from home, or even went on vacation. Certain restrictions still apply at some locations, though, like airports, schools, public transportation, and sites where heavy machinery is being used. Medical marijuana is currently prescribed to about 30,000 Israelis, and the list of cases when it can be administered is constantly being expanded, so it becomes even more available to those who need it to manage their health conditions. Summer's upon us, which means so is the heat, so it's no surprise that at this time of the year, bars and pubs are getting even more crowded. I mean, what's better than an ice-cold beer on a hot day? Well, while bars are celebrating the growth, it can be overwhelming. So one Israeli startup has figured out a way to provide real-time data to the business owners through technology. All right, joining me now is Noah Mantel, Senior PM of Weissberger. I hope I pronounced that correctly, to talk to us about this creative app. Thanks for joining us.
Thank you for having me.
So what is Weissberger?
Weissberger connects to bars all over the world and also connects to the big breweries that supply the beer to them, right? So we hook up hardware into the lines of the beer, like you see here, and basically we transmit data to both the bar owner and the breweries so they can make smarter decisions about their business. Interesting.
Now, how did you come up with the idea and also the name of this company?
Right. So the idea, we have two amazing co-founders, Ori and Omer. They came up with an idea in a similar field. They said, we're going to create, self-pouring tap. And they started with that, and they got some bars interested, and then they started noticing the data and knowledge gap that exists in the industry between breweries and bars. There was some sort of disconnect there, and so they saw a larger vision that they could tackle, and so they went for it. To answer your second question, the name is named after Omer's grandmother's last name, and so it kind of has a family connection, which is kind of like the business is run. It's very, family oriented.
Weissberger.
Yeah.
It's a great name. Definitely a little hard to pronounce, but I think I nailed it.
Right.
So tell us a little bit about how, this software works. How does it help manufacturers and bar owners specifically?
So once we connect to the beer lines themselves and then also connect to the point of sale system, which is essentially the cash register, we're able to collect data such as, and this is specifically for breweries, they're interested in the quality that their beer is poured. So if you are a major brewery and you have 150,000 bars, in one region serving your beer, you have no way of making sure that they adhere to the quality standards that you set. They used to, send over people to test it, but they only got to maybe 1 or 2% of the bars worldwide. What we allow them to do is to look at it on a macro level and make sure that all the bars are serving their beer in the highest quality, just like you'd like to drink it when you go to the bar. The bar themselves, right? So we get we can tell them how much beer they're wasting because we compare how much they've sold to how much they've poured, making sure that they don't lose inventory, which is typically about 15 to 20% loss worldwide. You know, talk about a retail store losing 15 to 20%.
No, that's absolutely crazy.
Right. So this is one of the main points that we help. Another main point is we allow them to increase their revenue by saying, you know what, we've noticed a trend that burgers really sell well with this type of beer. Right? You should add this to your portfolio.
Now that's what's really cool, because I mean that's also data that can be used to help consumers as well, not just bars.
Right.
But you know, if you're sitting there and you don't know what to order, but the you know, the bar owner or the person who's serving you has an idea of what people normally pair and what works best.
Right. And this is something that, you know, we can provide the bars with this information so they can, you know, add more combos to the menu, like a burger.
How many bars are using this technology now?
We have thousands of bars all over the world. We're in 12 different markets. We are hooked up to some of the biggest brewers in the world.
Wow.
And so we're kind of everywhere from, you know, Asia to South America to Europe, obviously, to North America. So we're kind of spread out.
Now, I guess the big question here is what is next for the company?
Getting to every single bar in the world. That's the goal.
That's it, just getting to every single bar.
Exactly.
And Israelis, I'm wondering how they're responding to this too. I mean, I'm assuming that this technology was created here in Israel,
Correct.
right? So these were the first people that it was being tested on, which is pretty good because this hot country drinks a lot of beer.
Yes.
But do Israeli vendors appreciate this maybe a little bit more than those abroad?
It's different. There are always cultural differences no matter what industry you're in, and so it makes it very interesting. But it's, you know, it's the same kind of differences that we see between Asia and Australia, for instance. Every market is very, very different. Consumption trends are very different, and what people look at is also very different.
Well, I'd love to take a look at some of the data that you guys have. Thank you so much for coming in, Noam.
Thank you for having me.
Even though it's often been said that there's no fountain of youth, believe it or not, Israeli researchers may have actually created one. They've discovered a magic formula to perpetuate the glow of youth without surgery or even injections. The secret ingredient in their new miracle cream is based on hyaluronic acid. That's what the body naturally produces that keeps skin hydrated and beautiful. Sadly, that process slows down with age, leading to wrinkles and sagging skin. Until now, the only way to reintroduce this acid into deep layers of skin was through painful needles. But an Israeli university team of chemists, physicists, cosmeticians, and nanotech experts have come up with a new way to reduce the compound into such tiny micronized particles that they can actually penetrate skin without such extreme and even life-endangering methods. Clinical trials show this first-ever formula is an effective antioxidant and powerful anti-aging agent. So now what you've all been waiting for, the latest apparent miracle from the Holy Land, is called prophecy. The Israeli nano cream will hit local shelves in 2 weeks, and its release on the global market is set for September. And I guess that means that by Halloween, we're all going to be going as supermodels.
The Hebrew word of the day is brought to you by IDC Summer Ulpan, open to everyone.
And now for our Hebrew word of the day. Summer is here and Israel is sunny as usual, but as much as we love the sun, we still have to be wary of it since it can do a lot of damage to our skin. So today's word is ol, which means skin in Hebrew. Interestingly, ol also means light, but it's not actually because of the connection between what the sunlight can do to your skin. According to the Bible, Adam and Eve were originally clothed in garments made of celestial light, but after listening to the treacherous snake, they lost their light-filled clothing and in exchange were dressed in skin. That's why, according to biblical text, we are condemned to a life of sunburns, my friends. So make sure to bring some sunscreen with you when you come and visit the Holy Land, because we wouldn't want you to ruin your ol. All right, let's go ahead and take a look at the weather forecast on that note. Tonight will be clear to partly cloudy with a low of 64 or 18 degrees Celsius. And tomorrow is expected to be partly cloudy with no change in temperature and a high of 82 or 28 degrees Celsius. All right, that's it for today's news. Today's exchange rate is 3.6 shekels to the American dollar. Remember to sign up for our daily newsletter at iltv.tv. I'm Natasha Kirchuk, and thanks for watching.